Welcome to Athassel Abbey. This is the bridge leading into the abbey, or priory as some people call it. It was once moated, which means there was a moat running all around the abbey. It was a fortified abbey to save it from being attacked by outsiders, and we will be given the tour and you'll see what I mean by a fortified abbey. Today we're in Athassel Abbey, about 3 miles from Golden. Magnificent and very, very large priory. Behind me is the bridge. It was once moated. There was a huge moat. Just at the back of the abbey, the river Suir forms a circle around the abbey, and they diverted the water from the Suir in to make a moat to protect the abbey, if you like. And this, where I'm standing now, is the guardhouse on this side of the bridge. You can just see that little bit of a road there behind me before the hill, and overhead we have the guardhouse that guarded the rest of the abbey proper, or the priory as it was called. It was also at one time a very, very big town that sprung up around here. Willem de Burgo, around the year 1200, founded this abbey, and we'll have a look at the rest of it. The priory's properties amounted to 1,000 acres of land, of excellent land at that, and 45 rectories, giving you an idea of the size of this site. The priory was founded by Willem de Burgh around the year 1200, and it was very populous around then. They say that there was a town of about 3,000 people that sprung up around what's left of this monastery, or priory as they call it. 3,000 people in the year 1200 was a very, very big settlement. Probably bigger than any town in the country. They could call it a monastic city if you liked. And somewhere in here is the tomb of de Burgh. People reckon he's buried in there. We couldn't find it, but he's there somewhere. It was the Augustinian order that founded this monastery or priory, and the same order that's in Glastonbury. Some of the stone was used for decorative purposes is from Dundry Hill near Bristol, suggesting that the Suir was navigable at the time, at least this far upstream. There's some wonderful examples of decorative stone here, more so than any abbey or priory that I've ever been in. At the centre of the monastery was a great church surrounded by the cloisters, and we think that this would have been the great church. There was conventional buildings, and there was the chapter house and storehouses and other secular buildings. There are some parts of this priory, they're actually over 100 feet tall, and it makes you wonder in the year 1200 how they scaffolded, how they got up the men up there, and the stones. They had to have a great technique because everything is not 1 millimetre out of plumb. I'm here in yet another part of Athassel Abbey. We're in what looks like a courtyard, and I think that the monks used to walk around these passageways. For instance, in this stretch of alleyway or laneway, there are 10 windows with the most magnificent arches on them that you can imagine. And I think by the looks of it, that it went around the 4 sides of these, and the monks would walk around these praying, but not necessarily all the clergymen that were here would walk around here praying. This is just another small section of Athassel Abbey. I don't know whether I mentioned it before, but this is an Augustinian priory, and we reckon that we are in the cloisters, the monks' inner sanctum, if you like, the cloisters, because it has all the earmarks of it. And I'm standing here behind the altar, that this was definitely an altar, and here on the wall is a magnificent piece of artwork. I'd call it artwork, and it seems to be the Virgin Mary and Saint Augustine here. We were just guessing that, but I'd say this is definitely the Virgin Mary. But it's wonderfully carved and wonderfully clear. That you could rub it on flat stone. It's a magnificent piece. Not that all over the cloister in here are magnificent pieces. Across to my left, we'll have a look in a moment, is the remnants of a statue. Could be Saint Augustine, could be Jesus Christ. It's so old and so worn that it could be even the Virgin Mary, we don't know. And it could be any other saint. There's a myriad of rooms and spaces in this whole priory. And as there wont at the time when priories like this became redundant or the monks were hunted off, people used them as burial places. So all over here you have people being buried here for hundreds of years, up to the modern day. They're still burying people here. You have wonderful pieces of art like this, like these. No one knows how old these are, but they could be 800 years old, going back to the foundation of here. And maybe it's stone like this that came from Somerset and brought up the river. And you'd wonder why they went to the trouble of bringing stuff from Somerset when Ireland was covered in stone. But maybe it was to do with the workmen or the sculptors that they had at the time. And maybe this abbey had a connection. They definitely had a connection. I forget the name.
Glastonbury.
They definitely had a connection with Glastonbury. Yeah. All these would have had. So that hence maybe the carved stone and the fancy stone was brought over here. One can spend hours in here looking at secret passageways and steps, wondering where they lead to. As my Australian friend here, who has an interest in architecture, we tried to put our tuppence worth to, admiring all the little bits of art that are everywhere in this priory. Gothic arch way above my head is about 20 metres or 60 feet to the point, we reckon. And that would have been there in 1319. But the whole priory and the town that was built around it was sacked, as they said. It was raided by other chieftains, Irish of course, and then they set about doing it up again, restoring the place, and 10 years later, or 20 years later, in 1829, they restored it back. But they did add it on bits. This would not have been there. They built this up between the arch and blocked off the arch for an extra bit of design. So over the years, all around the place, you can see the older, the very, very old, and if you call it the years that came forward, it was sacked and burned several times. The town that was built around it was destroyed. The monks again moved back in here, and as I say, I don't know, did up the place, restored it. And in some cases, like up on the walls here, on both walls, there's actually coloured plaster that has survived all these years, 800 years. When you stand back, you can see that at one time that was plastered and painted.
An example of a doorway that was probably accessible from another floor, leading to a very narrow stairway, and it leads to another part of the abbey.
Well, I'm in what we assume is the monks' cells. It's about 20 feet long, about 10 foot wide, and very low, maybe 7 foot tall, the roofs. But the floor heights would change over the years. And along here there's a line of these cells, all exactly the same at one part of it. So we assumed it was where the monks bedded down, and there would probably be definitely more than one monk in each one of those cells. I'm here in yet another part of Athassel Abbey. We're in what looks like a courtyard, and I think that the monks used to walk around these passageways. For instance, in this stretch of alleyway or laneway, there are 10 windows with the most magnificent arches on them that you can imagine. And I think by the looks of it, that it went around the 4 sides of these, and the monks would walk around these praying, but not necessarily all the clergymen that were here would walk around here praying. This is just another small section of Athassel Abbey.